here. So there's some interesting shadows going on, but we're gonna roll with it. Yeah. Like always, I have not planned ahead except by making this little list. It's a bit bright. This little list here that I'm going to use to keep track of a few movies I wanted to mention. Some of these I saw months ago, and I also have a pretty bad memory for directors' names, actors' names, plot points even. So, yeah, just bear with me on that because I did not prepare because I wanted to ramble for you. So, I'm going to start with 2 movies I saw recently because they're fresh in my mind. Then I'm gonna go do some of my favorites that I saw in the past year. And then I will go over others that I liked. It's an abridged list, but I think a decent one. And should be long enough, plenty long. So, I may also hold up the list from time to time so that the camera can focus, because we know the camera likes to play games with my heart, really. Alright. It's quite dark in here so that you can fall asleep more easily. So, yeah, I may struggle to read as well. Alright, first 2. 1. Uncut Gems. I stayed up really late New Year's Eve. And then the following day I went with my friends to see Uncut Gems in a theater. And then we got milkshakes and fries at a diner afterwards, which was the perfect way to ease into the new year. So I associate it with that day, which I really liked. Apart from that, I think it's excellent. I have to say, when I saw the trailer, or when my friend who saw it before me told me how good it was, told me what it was about, I was not interested. It's Adam Sandler. It's about this guy who gambles a lot. He plays too loose and fast with his money. It gets out of control. There's like some guns. There's some crazy jewelry. There's like, I don't know, like fast cars or something. I saw it and I thought, not for me. I was wrong. So Adam Sandler's character is a jeweler in New York, I believe. And he moves money around in an irresponsible way. There is crazy wealth and like jewelry and like all of that is in the movie. But it's the way that it's shot that makes it so great. I also think Adam Sandler does an excellent job in it. It's a really good character for him. Kind of similar to his character in Punch Drunk Love, which just in, I guess, in the way in which he has this like very frenetic energy, a lot of tension and anxiety in his body, in the way he interacts with people, neurotic, all of that's at play in this character. Unlike in Punch Drunk Love, where I think the character is maybe suffering from those neuroses in a way that's not necessarily all he's doing, in Uncut Gems, this character is suffering by his own hand. He's also neurotic by his own hand. He's in control. I don't know quite what what's fair to say, because he also, I mean, he seems like a true gambling addict. Just focusing this. So I don't quite know what's fair to say. I guess my point in general is that these characters are very similar in their energy, though the cause of that energy or the root of it is a bit different. Anyway, the reason I liked it is I think it's very smartly shot. The way they manage, I believe it's by two brothers, I forget their names now, but the way they manage the tension is excellent. It's very gripping. There are small moments of discomfort, like the tension is high because of a mistake someone has made, and there's this sort of special kind of discomfort that's maybe, it's not quite cringeworthy, but it's like you enjoy the discomfort as an audience member, and you may even find it a bit funny, like you laugh at certain moments nervously. So it's super fun to watch. Well shot as well. I think it's all a handheld camera, and the intro is this wild trip through a gem. Well, it starts with a scene with some brief gore or a little bit of visual violence. Takes you on this wild journey through this gem, and then at the end something happens that I won't spoil, but it moves out of the movie in a similar way that for a movie that's about a gambling addict with like a bejeweled Furby who is like power and fame and wealth chasing and hanging out with basketball players and stuff, given all of that, it still reaches something of the ineffable, which is really excellent. There's a lot of other stuff to unpack, but the last thing I'll say, it's also interesting the way in which this man, the Adam Sandler character, profits from people of color. So in the beginning he's profiting because people of color are mining these gems that he then sells for a profit, like a disgusting profit. And in the end, he's gambling, betting on basketball games, and trying to affect the luck of the players or the team in a way that is also benefiting from the labor of these people of color. And that parallel works really nicely as well. More to unpack. I'll stop there, but I highly recommend it. It's really great. And the other movie I saw recently, not in a theater, but on my computer, was The Souvenir. I watched it because a friend recommended it to me, said he had really liked it, so maybe I had high expectations. I didn't love it. It's about a film student who falls for it's unclear if he's a film professor or what, but some man who's older than her slightly and knows a lot about film and is seemingly helping her grow as an artist, but actually he is an addict, and he's also a bit of an emotional vampire, and really he just sucks her dry, and she gives everything she has to the relationship, and yeah, that's how 95% of the movie plays out. I did think there were some beautiful shots, but overall I found it boring. She's a film student, for example, and there of Hitchcock and how Hitchcock would have a movie of very traditionally shot scenes, traditional, like common pacing, all of that, broken up by one standout scene that was shot in a wildly different manner. So and without showing the the fact of the matter. For example, Psycho, all the shots, all the pacing prior to the shower scene are super normal and typical, and they kind of reel you in, right, and get you used to this pace and sort of put a lull on everything in a way. And then you have the shower scene with short staccato scenes, like shots and cuts. You never even see the violence, but it stands out as a memorable scene. So, as a film student in film class, she's talking about this with her professor, and it's brought up more than once from different angles, sort of. Not always the same example, but that's mentioned, right? So you think the filmmaker would use that tool in her own movie? I mean, in The Souvenir, you would think there would be a standout scene, or you would think that there would be this change of pace at some point, at a turning point, but there's not really. It just keeps going like it's a straight and flat and even plane for miles, is how it felt in terms of pacing and in terms of development. So I thought it could have benefited from something like that. That still wouldn't have been such a big problem if the man, the love interest, were in any way, shape, or form, like if he were in any way attractive to the viewer. It might have been easier to understand her infatuation with him. I found it baffling. I found him pretty boring. I didn't think the performance was that gripping or compelling, and so ultimately I just didn't really care about their relationship or about either of them, to be honest. So it wasn't my favorite, but if you liked it, let me know why. I would love to hear why. Okay, I'm just gonna cross stuff off so I know what I talked about. Okay, now movies I really liked. Okay, so excited to talk about this. For example, I saw A Portrait of a Lady on Fire in theaters in December, and it was amazing. So good, so beautiful, just transcendent. I thought it killed me. I loved it. It's about a painter who goes to this remote island to paint a woman's portrait to send to her soon-to-be fiancé in Italy. I think in the 17th century, something like that. And I don't want to say much more, except for two things. Well, it's just beautifully written. It's beautifully shot. There are these dark moments that don't feel like visually dark moments that don't feel cliche at all. I think they're shot in a really refreshing way, and it adds a lot to the movie. And I love the way they talk about that Greek myth and work it into the movie, especially at the end. Trying not to spoil anything. I don't think I have. And, okay, these are the two things you need to know. The first, the most important, actually, is that there is just bunches of ASMR opportunities for ASMR in the movie. She's a painter. There's a lot of up-close shots of her drawing sketches with charcoal on paper, or painting on a canvas, or the sound of the fabric of the dress that the woman is going to wear. it's just there are a lot of sensory details that are really enjoyable and pleasant and lush. I really liked that. The second thing, the use of music is amazing, and there's a scene with women singing that gave me chills for a minute straight. I could not get over it. It just, shook my entire body with emotion or anticipation, or I don't know. But if the souvenir was not compelling to me, Portrait of a Lady on Fire was the exact opposite of that. I found it endlessly compelling and insanely beautiful in every way. So, highly recommend. Then I would say, hang on, I gotta check what we got. Yeah, that was maybe I think maybe my favorite. Okay, another movie, I'll cross it out, I wanted to talk about that is equally transcendent, I think, though radically different, is The Last Black Man in San Francisco. It's about a black man in San Francisco. Two black men, really, they're friends, but there's a main character and a secondary character. And again, no spoilers, they decide to kind of squat in this man's, the main character, the protagonist, decides to squat with his friend in the house in San Francisco that his grandfather built. It's on the market, and so no one's living in there in the moment. So they decide to enter and fix it up. And when I say squat, they're not ruining it. They're actually trying to restore it to its original glory. So they break in essentially, but then fix everything up. And it's been a while since I saw this one, so I'm not quite sure how to unpack it. But I think, I focused just to lose it there. I think it's a very beautiful depiction of class and economic disparity, particularly in San Francisco. How this tech bubble and wealth is pushing people out of the community and out of their communities, right? I think it deals really well with that without actually, it doesn't do so directly, surprisingly. It takes place in present day, but there's this very slightly, almost imperceptible, magical quality to the world in which they're in. So it's the real world, it's present day, but it almost feels like a different path, not quite a parallel universe, but the world next door. I guess I'm just trying to say the world feels like our world, but it's lit differently. It's everything is heightened emotionally. The music that's used is emotionally gripping and beautiful and even life affirming. So it's just a gorgeous movie. And then because it's set in this I totally lost my train of thought. It's a ramble. I'm sorry. It's just a beautiful movie. If you care about music at all, too, I would say that alone is a good reason to watch it. It's also very well acted, and I believe it was written by the main actor and his friend. So I don't know if it's technically independent, but second. I think Parasite is very cleanly written. It's a very tight script that deals very well with class and privilege, right? And I don't think it could be improved upon, even. I really like the movie. However, I like Burning more. Burning deals with similar privilege and like issues of class and the gulf between, in the case of Burning, like I would say like middle class, lower middle class, and upper class, like 1%. It deals with it in a way that's a little less clean, in a good way. What I mean by that is, if the movie is posing a question about class, like Parasite is, like Burning is, in Parasite you get an answer to that question. In Burning, the answer to that question is another question, is another question, is another question. Like you get answers to the questions, and it's braiding itself along to some kind of central thesis. But at the end, you also have unanswered questions that make you continue thinking about the movie long after you've seen it. In Parasite, you may think about the movie long after you've seen it too, because of the ingenuity of the plot and the surprise of the plot, right? The ending, and also like the middle, like the twist. But in Burning, you keep thinking about the movie because it doesn't answer anything cleanly. It leaves some things open-ended in a way that only enhances the central thesis of the movie, I think, in part because it accesses some kind of emotional tension in the viewer. It strikes some kind of chord, some deep sadness that I think is not necessarily accessed by Parasite, in part because Parasite is so clever. So that's what I would say about those two movies. I think you should see both of them. They're fantastic. But I like Burning more. Let me know what you thought about Burning if you saw it. You know, there's a lot of things I still think about Burning, and I like the pantomime to cat, like whether the cat was real at all, if where she went. I don't want to spoil anything. I have a lot of theories, and I think that's the thing, is that the world feels very real, and the way the plot plays out, even though there's a huge ratcheting up, there's a huge moment, like a huge memorable moment and scene in that movie, right, towards the end. The moment feels earned, and it's believable, even though it is a very heightened moment that maybe you wouldn't have expected at all, right? So even though it's surprising, it's earned, and it just keeps you thinking about it. And the characters' motivations and what the characters are really capable of. So I love it. Another quick word about Parasite before we move on is that about Parasite's cleverness, right? Is that if you've seen, I forget his name because I'm terrible, but if you've seen his movies, like I've seen Okja, Parasite, Mother, and Memories of a Murder, I would actually say Mother and Memories of a Murder are better than Parasite, in my humble opinion. I think Parasite is kind of hitting this middle ground for him in terms of I would never say, I don't want to say gimmick, because I think there are these clever plot inventions or these twists he puts on the worlds in some of his movies. For example, in Okja, Tilda Swinton's performance, for example, is very, it's like a caricature. Her character is like a caricature. And there are some other things at play in that movie where the whole world feels, even though it's a dark world, it feels almost whimsical or twee in some way. And then you have Memories of a Murder and Mother, which are very realistic and dark in a way that doesn't shy away from a more extreme realism. So one thing that's kind of interesting about Parasite is that the twist in Parasite takes what would be a very harsh, realistic depiction of the world, similar to Mother and Memories of a Murder, and adds this little twist in the plot which sort of brings over some of the inventiveness that he has at play in Okja, for example, and I think that combination is pretty successful. It's a half-baked idea. I'm gonna work it out a bit more. But, okay. So. What is this one? Oh, I saw Shoplifters 2 a long time ago, and so I don't have enough to say about it. I think I saw it in February, except that I thought it was very good. A very good, where did I put Bernie? Okay. A very good depiction of like a found family and choosing your family and choosing your loyalties. And again, a very interesting depiction of a particular kind of poverty that I think is well rendered there and beautifully shot and all of that. I can't name specific scenes or really unpack it because it has been so long. Then, oh, okay, another thing I wanted to say. I saw Us and Get Out. Obviously, I saw Us this year. But kind of like I wanted to compare Burning and Parasite, I wanted to briefly compare Us and Get Out. Plenty has been said on both of these, so I won't dwell on them. I think Get Out is the better movie. So essentially, I think Get Out doesn't flinch. I think it goes really hard at what it's trying to say, and it is perfectly executed, whereas Us is very good still, and dealing with the same, if not similar, if not adjacent themes, right? Like oppression and all that. But this is a bigger problem with Us. I think the rules of the world, for example, aren't as clearly drawn, so it ends up subtracting some of the significance from the central thesis of the movie, because you get a little confused about some of the plot holes, essentially. Like, you know, I think some of the exposition that takes place when they're underground, first of all, it's a huge chunk of exposition. Second of all, I forget what I didn't quite buy, but I remember feeling that I didn't quite buy it. The scope of the world was, or the scope of the phenomenon was a bit unclear, but it was still very entertaining. Okay, so a few more big ones before I just go through other stuff. I'm gonna mention My Favorite Shapes by Julio Torres, who's the guy in Los Spookies. like with the family with the chocolate empire. So he has this comedy special called My Favorite Shapes on HBO, and I really like it. It's a kind of comedy I've never seen before, and I don't think anyone else could have pulled it off. Basically, he's just sitting on stage, and there's a little conveyor belt going by with these different objects, and he talks about what he thinks about each one, and it kind of goes from there, but it's so good, and I highly recommend it, especially if you're into comedy and are open to things that aren't just strictly stand-up. Okay, then I wanted to mention Jojo Rabbit. Really enjoyed it. Didn't think I would. I really like the director and writer of it. I love What We Do in the Shadows, like everyone else and their mothers, right? And so I trusted him to pull it off, but at the same time, I wasn't quite sure how he was going to pull it off. You know, this comedy about the Nazis seemed like an insane idea, to be honest, and like it could go wrong in so many ways. But I think one of the reasons it was successful is because the main character is a young boy. The movie is about his change, like his transformation into a supporter, an ally. He goes from the dark side to the good side. It would not have worked the other way around. And because he's a young boy, Hitler is always imaginary, and like he's an imaginary friend, and so he doesn't loom as large as the real figure did. Obviously, he's actually, as this imaginary friend, he's supportive and encouraging and like a little sidekick even, which I think is essential to the movie for it to succeed as a comedy. And I thought that was very cleverly done and very carefully managed, and it succeeded. I laughed. There's a hair in my face somewhere. I think it hit a very good balance of all its elements. Because of the things I mentioned, it was able to succeed as a comedy. At the same time, it didn't feel too slapsticky or too carelessly funny in a way that was disrespectful. Because it also incorporated a few emotional moments, and the emotions at the heart of the movie were real and true and good. And so the movie had a lot of heart, essentially, and it works well. It's funny, and it's worth a watch. Then we have, let's see. Okay, these two you may not have seen. So, Jawline is the first one I'll say. It's, let me cross off the next one too. Okay, so Jawline is a documentary, I think on Hulu, about, TikTok influencers. I had to think if it was social media in general, but I think it's just TikTok. So about people who are making it big on TikTok and chasing fame, essentially, and trying to catapult off their 15 minutes of fame and build some kind of career for themselves. Something about the way this woman shot this documentary, it plays like a movie, and it's not just like I love MTV's True Life as much as anyone, especially growing up. Watch that all the time. But it's not just this cut and dry documentary. Instead, the way she shoots some of the scenes, they feel almost eerie. Like there's this disconnect or this dissociation between the person and like the way they're able to inhabit the world. So there's this, this like slight distance or eeriness to some of the shots that is at the same time very beautiful. It's like this thing that like stretches away and while A being beautiful, it also B highlights the strange nature of the behaviors of these people and the values of these people, and like the weird dynamic of trying to get popular on TikTok and maintain that popularity and transform that popularity into something that offers you some kind of security or stability long term. I think all of those shots that are eerie, the way in which they're shot, basically highlights the sense of hope and possibility, while also putting some distance to it, some strangeness to it, that is simultaneously pointing at the unlikelihood, like the low probability of anything really playing out in their favor, especially long term. So I just think it's excellently shot. There's also a few bits that are truly funny. There's some shots too of like fanatics following the TikTok celebrities around or whatever, the big dick, I don't know what they're called. And fainting when they see them and like needing water and lying down on couches because they're so overwhelmed by joy. It's fascinating and very well done. The next one I loved that you probably haven't seen, or less likely to have seen than, say, Jojo Rabbit or Us or Parasite, is Lady J. I don't know when this actually came out, but I found it on Netflix a few months ago and watched it. I think it came out last year, maybe. Not sure. It's a movie about a woman in, I don't know what century France, 16th, let's say, no idea, who's very wealthy and falls for this sort of Casanova guy who eventually leaves her for a younger woman. And even though he's always told her it was going to play out that way, she's still surprised when it happens and hurt and jealous. So she hatches this plan to destroy his happiness with this younger woman, essentially. And okay, if we're talking about the scope of movies, or like if they're expansive, this one is not, but it knows that it's not, and that's why it succeeds. So the whole thing takes place in this very small world with a very small cast of characters. You basically know the gist of the plot from about a third of the way through, and there's not many extraneous threads that come in to add more texture or to add more depth to the world or the characters. It's just this straight and narrow path forward. So it should be boring, but it is not, because as it plays out, you just feel everything like ramping up a little bit more than you could have anticipated, and you're so enthralled with this plan. You want to see it play out. You're not quite sure if it will work. its end, just because the way she does it is so cunning and conniving, and it's very fun to watch, and it's very well done, and it's like this very clean movie that is almost like a puzzle where every piece fits in perfectly. And that's the fun of it. Like, it doesn't have an unanswerable question. I mean, I think it does. Something like, what lengths would you go to hurt someone who hurt you? What's the worst thing that love could make you do? What's the worst thing that being scorned could make you do? And would it really satisfy you in the end? I think that's maybe the unanswerable question. But it takes a very narrow path to get there, a very straight path. There are a few surprises, and yet the machination of it is just so smooth. It's a total pleasure. Okay, so from there I'm going to go through other movies on my list that I liked, but maybe won't talk about quite as much. Okay, I saw Kindergarten Teacher with Maggie Gyllenhaal. It's very, very good. I think her acting is superb. It's about a kindergarten teacher who takes a little too much interest in one of her students because she thinks he's a genius. But really, she's just seeing what she wants to see in him and trying to, in a way, like, make herself more important than she really is, perhaps. And yeah, selective hearing, selective everything. It's very good, and her character is very complicated and unlike any other character I've seen recently or ever. So, it's very good. Then I have on here Fox Slugs with Natalie Portman, about a pop star who gets famous after she sings at a vigil for shooting, like a school shooting, and her career as a pop star. I think the best thing about that movie, and the most the riskiest decision with the highest payoff, is the use of the narrator. There's this omniscient narrator voice over happening that is done by this guy with a very authoritative voice. It's done from this perspective where it feels like it's an autobiographer or something like that. And so it is useful, I think, because it zooms out from the story as it's unfolding and gives it more significance simply by virtue of recounting anything in this woman's life to begin with, right? Like, that someone is even an omniscient voice looking at her life with this particular lens, which is a very matter-of-fact point of view, but also a semi-bleak one about her rise to fame and all of that. I just thought it added a lot to the movie, and it's not a technique I had seen used in that way, like a voiceover, yes, like an omniscient narrator, okay, but not quite with this tone. And so I really liked that, and it's worth watching it just for that. Then on here I have Happy as Lazzaro and The Wonders, both by an Italian director. Happy as Lazaro came out last year maybe, and The Wonders earlier, I want to say, but I watched this year after I realized I like this director, and I forget her name right now. So Happy as Lazaro is about these sharecroppers living in Italy in the 1970s who have not been told that it's illegal to be working in the way in which they're working. Like, the owner of the land is exploiting them basically illegally. And so it's about their lives, and then halfway through the movie there's this big shift where they're discovered and they go out from the sharecropping farm into the real world. And then there's this other big shift at the end in which I won't get into too much detail, but the movie becomes like fabulous all of the sudden. And that's a really interesting shift that I think, again, was a risky decision, but one that ultimately paid off and gave greater weight to the story than it would have without it. It made the movie greater than the sum of its parts, essentially. So I really liked that. And The Wonders as well is so good, about these poor farmers, I guess, as well. Poor farming family. Oh, they have bees. They collect honey. And one of the daughters wants to enter the family's products in this fair, this sort of regional fair for local goods. And it's really interesting because the people producing the local fair look at the family like it's not a freak show, but they look at the family as this like exotic thing, and they're selling essentially the idea of this family as this exotic thing. These farmers living a rural life, making this honey by themselves. And it's actually the producers of the local fair who, in the way the movie's shot, come off as nearly extraterrestrial. Like, they are so otherworldly because they put on all this makeup and they have this certain level of production value for the show, and they feel so far removed from the life that you are otherwise immersed in as the viewer, which is this rural life, dealing with bees, doing your work, worrying about very simple things. So that juxtaposition is really well managed, and her movies are just beautiful. Okay, not much to say about these because they're not new, but I finally this year saw Trainspotting and Boogie Nights, both of which I highly enjoyed. I also saw The Love Witch, very good. Came out a few years ago, maybe in 2016, I want to say. I went to this theater that only shows movies, it's very hip, only shows movies shot on film, not anything digital. And this movie's about this witch in the 70s. It's shot on film. It's all in this, like, groovy Technicolor kind of very visually stimulating world about this good witch who is trying to find a boyfriend and, casting spells, making potions, breaking hearts, getting her heart broken. And the character, the witch herself, plays into every gender role and the way that she thinks about men and acts around men. But the content of the movie is actually very feminist, and it's brilliant. It's also like a 70s B movie. Like, there's weird violence and gore, like very low production value violence, gore. And then by buying into the idea of love, capital L love, the movie is trying to dismantle it at the same time. Dismantle like a fairy tale, love at first sight, love story. There's this one scene where she's on a horse in a white dress, and her love interest is leading the horse, and they've just had this intimate moment of confessing their love, and the movie just cuts out all background sound and music, and you just, in this empty space of sound, hear the horse walking forward, and it sounds almost awkward and very hollow, just like clunking forward. So stuff like that. It's great. And it's so quotable too. So quotable. Just like, born baby. Anyway, it's super good. This came out last year or the year before that, but I also finally saw American Honey. I put off seeing it for a long time. I don't know why, but I thought I wouldn't love it. I was also unclear what it was about. I thought it was just about this girl who's a drifter, free love kind of person or something. It didn't seem interesting to me, and those things are actually true, I guess. But the better way to sell it to me, at least, would have been to say that it's about this group of misfit kids who drive in a van around the country selling magazine subscriptions. They're kind of grifters, they're kind of scam artists, but they mean well. They just don't belong anywhere, and they come together as this, motley crew family, and it's about one girl in that group in particular and her relationship with this other guy in the group, and how much you can trust people. Honestly, the scene where she's talking to the three men with hats, I'll just say that if you've seen it, but that really, when Shia LaBeouf comes in, I'm not going to say anything more, but it is very immersive. You feel like you're actually traveling around with them, and it's a world and a life so different from my own that I just found myself wanting to spend more time in that world and understand the characters better. They all felt very real to me, and seeing what brings people to acts of desperation, I guess, is something it deals with as well. And seeing people trying to figure out what love is and what it should look like, something like that. And how to love yourself, how to take care of yourself, while still finding a sense of belonging with other people, even when you're transient. I don't know, I just thought it was super immersive, and such a new place to experience as a viewer. So, alright, got a few more for you. I saw Marriage Story. I liked it a lot. I really liked the home visit scene with Adam Driver. The story was well served by Baumbach's style. Noah Baumbach, right? Like that sort of natural conversational pace that he sets with his writing. I thought it was excellent for a movie that purports to give you, I say purport just because they're actors, right? But the marriage purports to give you like a real glimpse at a marriage, or a real idea of what a marriage is and how it falls apart. So, yeah, I just thought the marriage felt very real. The relationship felt very real. The fights felt very real. And I could just, the way the tension clouded each person's judgment felt a little too real as well. So I think it's worth it just for that. And the beginning of the movie, where they talk about what they love about frame for the movie that's otherwise largely about divorce. Because although it's quite quick compared to the rest, it is very efficient in getting you to believe in why they got together in the first place, and I think that's crucial if you're meant to care about the rest of the story. So that was really well done. Then we got Monos, about these teenagers living in the Colombian jungle, like guerrilla warriors. They, I don't know what to say about it except I really liked it. There's this music in it that's kind of this downshifting sort of like gear thing that's superficially slowed down. And it's weird because it's like downshifting, but as it shifts down, you feel the tension rising. And I don't know how they came up with that music, but it's phenomenal. And I really liked the movie otherwise too, I guess because, again, it was a world so unlike my own. It was a group of characters that I thought were interesting, and it's been billed as this kind of Lord of the Flies-like scenario. And it's a bit of that, but the movie kind of gets split into two halves. The first is just in one spot on top of a hill, and this event, like inciting event, happens in the middle that is pivotal and like launches the rest of the movie into action, where they move from that spot, go further into the jungle, and everything unravels from there. Like Lord of the Flies, though, yeah, the different allegiances and how those change is at play. Also, the level of cruelty people are willing to inflict on one another is at play, when under pressure, kind of a thing. Which was sad to watch because the group prior to this this turning point felt otherwise very solid, and it makes sense why things start to unravel. It's a big enough moment that they would unravel. It was a little tense to watch, but worth it and beautiful. Okay, then we have my battery's about to die, so two more. I'll say quickly. The Art of Self-Defense, which is very funny. Okay, focus. It's very funny and has this sort of dark sense of humor that's making fun of toxic masculinity and strength and power and like tough guy, just toxic masculinity in a way that is so deadpan and dark and feels very fresh, and it's just hilarious. So worth watching for that. It's not a perfect movie, but the humor, it's a tonal note that I haven't seen before, and I loved it. And the last one I'll tell you about is Biggest Little Farm, which is the most wholesome documentary you could ever imagine. There are baby piglets. Baby piglets is redundant, but there are piglets. There are plants everywhere. There's a dog. There's it's a couple working together to make this farm a reality after leaving a big city. And it's just wholesome. It's like planet Earth on a very small scale on a single farm. And the documentary itself was made by that couple, I think. So it also has this very homegrown, homemade feel. also love to hear if you disagree with me about anything. I know this is an unplanned ramble, so I wasn't always as coherent as I would like to be, but I tried to just express how I felt about the movies and how I experienced them. So, thank you. I hope you're doing super